Today on Rappler, a fertilizer plant in Texas explodes in a massive fireball. Up to 15 are dead.
Families that know unspeakable grief summon the courage to petition their elected leaders, not just to honor the memory of their children, but to protect the lives of all of our children. A few minutes ago, a minority in the United States Senate decided it wasn't worth it.
U.S. President Barack Obama condemns the defeat of gun reforms in the Senate. And Commission on Elections Chair Sixto Brillantes warned senatorial bets to advertise at their own risk. Hello, I'm Maria Ressa. Welcome to Rappler, your social news network. A massive explosion at a fertilizer factory in the town of West Texas kills an estimated 5 to 15 people, according to the local police. The blast happens Thursday in Manila. KWTX television initially reported 60 to 70 dead, citing local emergency services director George Smith. The blast destroys dozens of homes, forcing more than 130 people from a nearby nursing home to evacuate. At least 100 patients are admitted to hospitals. Witnesses say the explosion sent a huge fireball into the air. Waco Assistant Fire Chief Don Yeager tells AFP it was an anhydrous ammonia explosion. The United States Geological Survey says the blast had a force equivalent to a 2.1 magnitude earthquake. West Mayor Tommy Musca tells CNN it's like a nuclear bomb went off. There fears a second fertilizer tank at the West Fertilizer plant could explode. The explosion comes just before the 20th anniversary of the 1993 Waco siege, a deadly confrontation between federal authorities and heavily armed members of a religious group. The siege ended with the group's compound burned down following a 51-day standoff. United States President Barack Obama accuses senators of caving to the gun lobby after a bid to expand background checks for gun buyers is blocked in the Senate by Republicans and some conservative Democrats. This was the most significant effort to change gun laws since the December 2012 massacre of 20 children in Newtown, Connecticut. Obama appears defiant and angry, calling the defeat of gun reforms in the Senate shameful.
Families that know unspeakable grief summon the courage to petition their elected leaders, not just to honor the memory of their children, but to protect the lives of all of our children. A few minutes ago, a minority in the United States Senate decided it wasn't worth it. By now, it's well known that 90% of the American people support universal background checks that make it harder for a dangerous person to buy a gun. And a few minutes ago, 90% of Democrats in the Senate voted for that idea. But it's not going to happen because 90% of Republicans in the Senate just voted against that idea.
Obama says senators caved to pressure and were scared the wealthy gun lobby would come after them in future elections. But he vows to continue fighting for reform, calling the defeat of gun reforms just round one.
So all in all, this was a pretty shameful day for Washington. But this effort is not over. I want to make it clear to the American people, we can still bring about meaningful changes that reduce gun violence, so long as the American people don't give up on it.
UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon urges North Korea to consider the South's offer of dialogue about the future of the closed Kaesong Industrial Zone. He says, quote, "I firmly believe that the recent offer of dialogue by the Republic of Korea is genuine and hope that the DPRK takes it seriously." North Korea previously dismissed the South's offers of talks as a, quote, "crafty trick." On Thursday, the North lays out preconditions for dialogue with Seoul or Washington. The National Military Commission wants an apology for, quote, "provocative acts against North Korea." North Korea also demands the withdrawal of UN sanctions imposed after the North's nuclear test in February and a guarantee to end South Korea-US joint military drills. South Korea rejects the North's, quote, "incomprehensible demands" and urges Pyongyang to choose engagement with the international community over provocation. After a 5-year break from politics, Jun Mga is running again for the Senate under the administration slate Team Pinoy. The former senator is known for leading a 2006 Senate probe into the 728 million peso fertilizer fund scam during the administration of Gloria Arroyo. The investigation found that funds set aside for fertilizers were diverted to support the 2004 campaign of then-President Arroyo. Mga says the case is now with the Sandigan Bayan.
For 6 years during the last administration. But on November 2011, the Ombudsman raised up already for the Sandigan Bayan. It's been there for almost a year and a half. So I wish that the Sandigan Bayan will get on with it.
Tell us why that's important. In 2000, Mga was named the Internet Man of the Year after he passed the e-commerce law. He says it is, quote, a quantum leap in the modernization of the industry. Mga also comments on the controversial anti-cybercrime law. What does Jun Mga think of the anti-cybercrime law? Are you for or against it?
As it is now, I'm against it. The House and the Senate version were good. Generally, it was acceptable.
Yes.
We have to protect our ID, our credit cards and our transactions. But in the bicameral conference committee between the House and the Senate, somebody inserted a provision to criminalize libel. And that spoiled the whole measure.
Jun Mga decision to run has been interpreted by his niece-in-law, United Nationalist Alliance senatorial candidate Mitos Magsaysay, as an attempt to take votes away from her. The former senator, though, says to Magsaysay's running for the Senate is, quote, incidental. President Benigno Aquino appoints the head of a poll watchdog and an information technology expert to the Commission on Elections. Louis Guia, Executive Director of the Legal Network for Truthful Elections, and Al Pareño, board member of the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board, are named the new COMELEC commissioners. Presidential spokesman Edwin Lacerda says both were chosen based on their previous work experiences. They filled the vacancies left by former commissioners Rene Sarmiento and Armando Velasco, who retired in February. Guia was an executive assistant under former COMELEC chair Christian Monsod and a consultant to former Commissioner Regalado Maambong. In an interview with Rappler, Guia says he aims to modernize COMELEC and strengthen its bureaucracy. Pareño specializes in litigation involving IT, which COMELEC chair Sixto Brillantes says is, quote, what we really need. Brillantes also says the appointments will expedite COMELEC processes, adding, now we can move faster. The Supreme Court clarifies it issued a temporary restraining order, not a status quo ante order, on the airtime limits set by the Commission on Elections. On Tuesday, Supreme Court spokesman Theodore Tez said the High Court issued a status quo ante order which reinstates the airtime limits for candidates of 120 minutes per TV station and 180 minutes per radio station. A status quo ante order seeks to undo an act or policy already implemented, while a TRO prevents its implementation. Te apologizes for the mistake. He says, I was told of the order and that the status quo as of 2010 was to be observed. I assumed wrongly. Lawyer Marlon Manuel says there's little difference between the two in terms of its effect. Despite the TRO on airtime limits, COMELEC Chair Sixto Brillantes tells election candidates to advertise at their own risk. Brillantes says in Filipino, if the petitioners are sustained, then it's okay, but what if they aren't? He adds, what if we're right? On my part, until now, I believe we're right. COMELEC Chair says they cannot run after candidates while the TRO is in effect, but he says, quote, the meter will run again as soon as the TRO is lifted. Let's now look at Rappler's Wrap for today, a list of the 10 most important events around the world you shouldn't miss. At number 2, a letter addressed to U.S. President Barack Obama that appeared to contain ricin, a lethal toxin, is intercepted. The U.S. Secret Service says the letter to Obama is intercepted at a mail screening site Tuesday. The same day, a letter sent to Senator Roger Wicker also showed traces of ricin. On Wednesday, special agents arrest Paul Kevin Curtis, believed to be the man who mailed the letters. At number 6, cheers and jeers greet the coffin of former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher as it passed through London Wednesday, mirroring how split public opinion was over her leadership. Ill-wishers are outraged by the decision to grant her a full ceremonial funeral that was estimated to cost about $15 million. Many felt it was wrong to spend a lot of money at a time of deep spending cuts. Critics disagree with Thatcher's radical free market reforms, but admirers say she transformed the economy and restored Britain's position as a major world power. And at number 7, Apple shares plunged more than 5% Wednesday after Cirrus Logic, a supplier of Apple components, slashes its profit forecast, suggesting its Apple business weakened. Apple shares closed at $402.80, down 5.5%. The decline robs Apple of its crown as the biggest U.S. company by market capitalization. Apple is now worth $378.25 billion, compared with oil giant Exxon Mobil's $385.68 billion. For the full top 10, visit Rappler.com's The Wrap. Every story on Rappler has a mood meter, which gives you 8 emotions to choose from. Click how you feel and your vote comes down to the mood navigator in the middle of the front page that crowdsources the mood of the day. It also shows you the top 10 stories that have affected Filipinos emotionally. If we take a look, these stories have gotten the most number of votes on their mood meter. The UAAP residency rule, a huge setback, 75% angry. And the story that's actually gotten the most number of votes, Ontiveros to Casino, why mom on NPA abuses, 91% don't care. Bringing the story to the mood of the day. Today, most people don't care. They vote enough, though. They care enough to vote don't care. Anyway, that's Rappler's Newscast for today, Thursday, April 18th, 2013. Visit Rappler.com and watch our newscast Monday to Friday. Tell us how you feel on our mood meter and help us crowdsource the mood of the day. I'm Maria Ressa. As we say at Rappler, tomorrow begins today.